Okay.
Amazing. So maybe a tiny bit of context. So this summer I was stewarding Traditional Dream Factory, which lots of you have been to, which is a regenerative village in Portugal. And kind of the key parts of the DNA is land regeneration, Web3, and play. And my role there was to steward the place. So basically taking care of the place, developing the project, and kind of my specific area was really focusing on the people. So we had quite a few events this summer, and we dreamed up this, let's say, pinnacle of the whole experience to be this village building, gathering, mastermind thing. That we're not very clear what it's going to be, but basically at the end of our stewardship, we wanted to bring people building similar projects around the world to a Traditional Dream Factory and just spend some days together. And that was kind of the initial dream. That's where it all started. And through the summer, I've been experimenting with lots of different ways of playfully engaging with groups. So that went through many different stages. It started in an art fair where we had this idea that, okay, everyone is an artist, so let's make an art fair. And we brought, and whoever was basically coming was invited to participate in different ways of creating art together. And I was hosting an opening ceremony. And what I decided to do is, instead of doing this classic model when there's a time and space and everybody gathers, I thought, no, I'm going to do a one-on-one opening ceremony with every single person. It took me 2 days to actually do that, but it was the most amazing experiment. And kind of the most powerful thing that came out of it was a book that we started to create. So basically, the opening ceremony was a check-in with a person, and there was a little process, and I was asking at the end of the ceremony to draw a page. So everybody contributed one page, and then I was like, oh wow, this is cool, let's do more pages. And then through this whole art fair, we just created this book that had lots of drawings, prompts, lots of things. So this is kind of one thread of bringing people together and creating an artifact, some kind of a very tangible thing. And that can be, you know, a book. It can be many other things. Like we also had a roadmap at TDF, which was basically like this big poster that you might remember that basically represented our stewardship, and people were drawing things on that and contributing. So this really became this very physical artifact, represents our journey together. So this thread kind of weaved together with this mastermind idea. And I thought, okay, so what if we don't just bring people together to spend time together in a space and, you know, share this interest and passion for building regenerative projects, but what if we actually create something? And the idea came to create a book, and a physical book. I always kind of imagine it as a, you know, a hardcover thing, just because I really like the limitations that it imposes, that, you know, it's a finite product, there's only X amount of pages, pages are certain, you know, format. It's not like an infinitely growing ecosystem that is digital and you cannot really like clearly define where it starts and where it ends because it's always growing. And it also forces us to actually create something. So this is really one thread. The other thread is play. And I think this is something I'm becoming more and more clear that it's one of the gifts and passions that I can bring to teams, which is just creating things through play rather than call things work, make it playful, make it fun. And for that purpose, I've been experimenting with cards, which are basically just empty index cards with different colors. And I kind of weave all of this together into this mastermind. So the idea was, hey, let's come for 11 days together. Let's play cards and let's make a book. And let's work 3 hours per day, or not work, but let's have 3 hours per day sessions of play with cards, because people also want to rest and people want to do their own kind of projects and cannot always put their life on pause. So it was a little bit ambitious project and I wasn't really sure how it's gonna go, but it actually worked. It was kind of mind-blowing. So let me share some things with you. Um, so right now we have already a website, and we have a draft 0.9 that is available, which was released this week. But how it was created, it really started with this. It was us coming together every day and creating cards, and there was a specific framework for it. I mean, the first rule of cards is that there are no rules, there are only pro tips. So this is like a meta game that is designed to break its own rules and for people to come up with their own rules. And it's basically a facilitation content creation methodology / sense making method that I'm developing. But every day we would just gather, create cards, experiment with different ways of putting them together. And every day we would focus on one chapter of the book. There were 6 chapters. And then we would take the cards into A4 pages. So I would give people like actual pages of paper. They would put the cards together on a piece of paper, kind of group them in different groups, and we're floating around, experimenting with different ways. And at the end, the last step was to display those pages in order. So what you see here on the picture is basically one chapter of the book that was created within 3 hours, all the pages, with people already displaying it in order, with all the key ideas we want to include on the page, with also people taking responsibility for stewarding individual page. So everyone would, like, every page would have a steward that then would be responsible of developing the page. That didn't mean that they need to write the whole page themselves, but they are ultimately responsible for make it happen. And we just kept doing it every day, and every day it got a little bit faster. We were fine-tuning as a group. So that was the first step. The next step was to take it into Figma. So we were taking it into a digital realm. So I'm gonna change the share screen to another tool. So one of my friends who was there is basically a master of this tool, which is a tool designed for software mapping and like mock presentation of apps. So like before you actually develop an app, you just kind of draw it using frames and how it's going to look like. So we actually used it to build the whole book there. So we were already in the same time as we were, the first step was to brainstorm and create cards and put cards onto pages, create pages as an A4 piece of paper. And then I'm actually going to show you a different one. Then we would scan the pages. So here you can see the A4 pages that were written. And this is really handwritten, half-baked ideas, just like what could be there, some drawing ideas, graphs, scans of cards. And then we would translate it into the first version of a page. And basically it worked because one page is one idea. So we couldn't also go super deep. We knew that the page has a limitation of text. So you can see, like, for example, this was like, oh wow, so heavy on text. So we really focused on using images to explain concepts rather than going super heavy on text. We found it to be much faster. So this was the first version of the book. And then we opened TDF for 2 days. We printed all these pages that we were able to make, even in like temporary phase. Some of them were still as, actual pieces of paper that were handwritten with hand drawings. We displayed it all on the wall and invited people to come and give us feedback. And this was amazing because it was the first time when we've seen, it was, I think, 190 pages hanging on a piece of wall, and people walking around like in an art gallery and giving us feedback. So this was quite a magical experience. Lots of good things came out of it. Many new cards as well were created that day. And from there, we just iterated it to draft 0.08. So that was basically taking it to the next phase, adding, some concepts, consolidating pages, realizing that some pages are maybe, duplicates, changing the structure, doing all this kind of pre-editing work, let's say. And then eventually the mastermind finished. We were left with, the main idea was that we want a book to be completed. This was unrealistic. We were both developing the process and the content in the same time. It was just too much to figure out on this also backend side of things to make it happen. So then we were left with editing, and the editing to the draft 0.9, which is now public. From start to end, it took us 3 months. So this is 20 people working on a book, 11 days, kind of 3 hours per day, some people a bit more, and then occasionally who wanted to step in asynchronously at different times. And now we have a book. It's like 180 pages or something like this. So quite comprehensive. And of course, it's more like a pointer of tips of the icebergs, of many different icebergs in this whole regenerative space, because we are covering many different like, let's say, chapters of regeneration. So we're starting with regenerating self, and then we are going to what's the second one? There's like even a story. I'm gonna maybe share it because I think it's quite nice. So yeah, like the story is that first a group comes together, and like, well, first is the self, right? So like, how do you actually take good care of yourself and make sure that you're nourished and exist also in a wider community? And then, okay, we have a group. So the group is coming together, and now we decide that we want to do stuff together. So how do we make decisions? How do we make sure that, this is sustainable over a long period of time? How do we deal with conflict? How do we set it up as a legal structure? And how do we exist with this matrix world that requires us to follow some procedures? And how do we hack it to make it more feasible for us to do what we actually want to do? And then, okay, so we figured this out. So the next is, what about resources? Where the money comes from? But what about other side of resources? Maybe money is not what there is. Maybe there's other forms of capital, and how can we use it together? And what are the new ways of managing all these different forms of capital? So this is kind of another chapter. And then it takes us to infrastructure. So, okay, we have the people, we know how to be together, we have the resources. Let's build the village. So this really comes all the way from visioning your village and then building it using different materials, working together with the land, planning. What are the things that you shouldn't fuck up when you buy land and look for land, and what happens if you actually mess it up, how to deal with all the problems, because this is always a story in every single project. What are the kind of lenses you can look at it, and okay, let's build it. What is the path from the camp where you have a land and there's nothing on it, all the way to this regenerative village that you want to have? And then the next step is regenerating nature. So actually, okay, let's focus on the land. What is, the role of humans in the context of nature? What are different ways of aligning with nature? How we can work with nature? All sorts of permaculture, agroforestry, and tons of other frameworks, working with water cycles and so on. And then the last chapter is beyond your village. So, okay, like we build the village is great, but we're, not just this tiny little thing. There's much more. So what are the other village? What are the things happening in our bioregion? What if we don't draw maps with artificial lines that we just arbitrarily decide there's somewhere there? But what if we, look at climates and other natural elements to decide, how the world actually is divided, and what are the other projects happening, and how can we collaborate? How we can change the culture on a global scale, how we can create a new way of economics that is more regenerative, and essentially at the end create more of a connected networks movement, and maybe move towards a network state model and things like this. So yeah, it's quite a comprehensive thing. Then we have some bonus epilogues with paradigm shifting articles and regeneration at sea. So like, what if we apply all this to a sailboat? Yeah, and then just tons of resources, finding the others, finding villages. Where would you start? What are the support networks you can tap into? yeah, and then shit ton of resources, basically. So this is the book, and it's kind of crazy for me that this was created with cards. Like, you know, I have boxes and boxes of cards that are full of ideas that were translated into a book. And yeah, what is the next step? And this is kind of the big questions where I would like to invite you for any kind of advisory, suggesty, brainstormy, commenty role that you feel called to. So I guess one question that I have is just basically hearing your feedback on that, and or any questions about the process, about the, you know, anything else. And maybe let's do this first, and then I'll move towards kind of what is the next step and brainstorming. So I don't know if there's any questions at this point or any kind of sharebacks, also so I can stop speaking and give you some floor.
First of all, I want to say that I think it's amazing what you achieved. It looks stunning. I don't know who made the pictures and all that sort of stuff, but it's just, yeah, honestly, wow, yeah, they're amazing. And Nico, yeah, that's so. That's my first thing I wanted to say, and the next thing is that I was wondering who you are addressing, who is looking for that. Where are the people that are looking for this type of book?
Great question. So the kind of the whole idea when we were weaving this mastermind together is that we want to encourage regeneration as a planetary shift. So it's not just speaking to, you know, people who are already building villages, but it's more about encouraging transition to this way of living, no matter where you are, kind of. I mean, of course, we don't want to be doing this initial work of pointing out, hey, there's so many problems going on in the world, you know, like, no, like, this is not what we want to do. We all know that, and there's no point of starting another book with 20 pages listing what is not working. So we just skip this part. So we're not trying to convince people or show or like do this first eye-opening thing, but it's more, okay, so you want to transition towards living more in tune with the land and maybe finding different ways of being together in a group and maybe living eventually in a village, but maybe not, you know. But you might be on different stages of your journey. You might be still working in a corporate job that you don't like, and you just realize that you don't want to be there, but you don't know how to transition, but you are interested in that. Or maybe you are already building a village. So it's quite a wide range of people, but basically people who are already sort of dipping their toes or already swimming in this regenerative movement. The kind of funny thing that we're realizing, I think, as a whole ecosystem, is while we have so much knowledge and so much already like lineage of knowledge, because it's like so much ancestral knowledge that was always there, we just rediscover it now. But you know, it's not like we're inventing anything new very often. But also we really don't know what we're doing. You know, there's so much to figure out, and building a village is just so complicated process. So even if, you know, we're talking to people who are building a village, we're all kind of like babies swimming in the water and trying to figure it out. What does it actually mean to regenerate the land, and how do you actually do that in practice when you are still reliant on the ecosystem that is not very supportive of these ideas by design? But yeah, the idea of the book is to really encourage people to start taking steps. And that's why also we have this journey. Like, it starts with yourself. So okay, maybe you're not yet looking for building a village with your friends, but maybe you can already start doing some practices as an individual that will put you in this more regenerative mindset. Because at the end of the day, if you don't take care of yourself, you're gonna burn out doing this. So like, this is really where it all starts. And then, okay, it's not just about you. What about the people and the relationships that you have? And how do you deal not only with the, you know, fun of being together, but how do you deal with the shadow of being with other people? And okay, once you dealt with that, okay, let's talk about the money. How do we manage resources? We all have different stories, and, you know, it's all the points for conflicts. So yeah, there is the whole story. And if you're building a village, okay, have you thought about this way of build material? Have you thought of this way of looking at the land? You know, so it's a very wide range of market, but it's basically people interested in regenerative lifestyle.
I can, yeah, and I like it a lot. It has me thinking a lot about how can one bring a group of people together, and so projects that take forever and nobody's really responsible, and by turning it around into something that is more communal and something that is more, collective. And there's a certain, it is what it is. You don't have to go through it 100 times and fix every little tiny thing, that it's actually generated out of this collective energy and this collective wisdom, that then becomes a thing. And it's like my design world is literally like, you do it and then you hand it off to somebody who then fixes every little thing, and then the fine typography, there's all of this, and there's energy in this that I really embrace. And it has me thinking about the co-creation aspect as well. I think with my teaching, it's often like I'm the professor and everyone's looking at me, and how lovely would it be next semester to say, hey, each week let's create a chapter, and so that I can also move my way down to the collective, or move my way into this decentralized circle. I'm doing a speculative futures project right now, and that was my hope with the students, but it's like they also have to learn how to, because they're looking at me like, well, what do we need to do? And I'm saying, well, what do you guys want to do? So there's all these questions of facilitation. So like, I understand actually the challenge and the beauty it is to actually have these 3 hours a day out of cards, creating content that then becomes digitized, that then becomes illustrated, that then becomes edited, and how to keep it still playful, but it's still a product. It's out there in the world, that it has to be well designed. And it's impressive. It lightens me. I feel like there's something light in the making of. Sorry, you're getting the bad cafe sound in the back. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I felt a need to connect myself to it, as this is a connection call. So I hope that's okay.
Thank you. I love it. It's super cool perspective. And just to reflect one thing on that, I think one element, this is also what I was sharing yesterday in the Doing Better Work Together conference, in the lighting talk, like this power of bringing a group together to create something, and like not call it necessarily a product, but an artifact, but it is a product. And just the creative process that happens, and seeing the spark in people's eyes when they are put in a position of creating something, it's just so magical. Like, I live for these moments, and seeing the group like really stepping into it and taking ownership, and battling for their ideas to be there, and then letting go and weaving them together. And I think this really can be applied to other contexts, like teaching as well, right? Like, why not have a chapter of a book that you're creating through your course, whatever the book is, because it doesn't need to be a book, it can be whatever. And you'll see a very different energy in the students, because suddenly they're creators, they're not students anymore, right? They're creators and okay, you are the facilitator, you hold the group, that's your, let's say, responsibility or your role. But so what? You can still open the container in a different way. So thank you for bringing this comment. Super, super precious.
No, it has me really thinking the speculative future. Each week we create a different world right now, but it would have, and I'm coming into it a little sideways, because they'd already taken the course partially with someone else. But I like the idea then that it's literally like each week is a different world. And after you've generated the world, 6 worlds, then you kind of, each group would take a world and blow it out. You know, there's like these, there's sort of beautiful ways of, you know, when you do group work, so often people drop the ball, or, you know, you've got these like tensions with collaboration. And so it almost feels like then it's like, okay, stewards, like this concept of you are the steward. And you, it's your, you know, it's your job to figure out how this is going to be delivered. You're a midwife, maybe. Yeah, it's nice. Thank you.
Amazing process. Could you speak a bit more about the invitation and like who showed up? Like you said, 20 people, but were they like living the whole time, like the whole summer in TDF, or did they came especially for this? And when was it decided that you would create something together?
Yeah, very
Tell me.
important question. The invitation is the key, right? Because it's supposed to invite the people, but also repel the people you don't want to have. So very important role. Yeah, so we kind of, at first we just had the idea, okay, in September we're going to invite people who build regenerative villages. So we knew there's going to be an in-person event, and it's going to be inviting people from the outside. So like, okay, we can have some people from our TDF ecosystem, and of course people who were present in TDF at that time would be there, but it wasn't designed just like for people in TDF. No, like we went deliberately looking for other people. And then this kind of whole idea was a bit, you know, work in progress through the summer. And I think we sent out the invitations maybe in the beginning of August, like that's kind of when the process started. So the idea was, yeah, 11 days in person. And I put like really the kind of effort, or I don't know, like an accent that I want people to be there for the whole time. And then in order, like we charged the normal TDF fee. So we didn't add like, you know, it's a mastermind for XXXX dollars, but no, it was just you come for the regular things that we charge people to stay at TDF. So we don't really make money out of it apart from, you know, covering our costs. And the kind of, you know, I created this brief description of what is going to happen, that you were going to, you know, bring village builders together. We're going to co-reflect on what does it take to build a village, what are the patterns, and we're going to create something to encourage this regenerative movement. And at first, it was not so clear to me that there's going to be a book. But I think the best thing that I could have done, and I think now I really would like to do that as much as possible in the future events, is basically in order to participate, everybody had to go through a call with me. So I just put a Calendly link, and if you want to participate, schedule a call with me. And that was really it, and that was the most effective thing I could have done, because I just connected with amazing people. At the end of the day, I think I said no to 2 people, and it was basically because they couldn't come for the whole time, and they would just miss kind of half. So it really made no sense. And we had this open day at the end. So we knew that the whole mastermind is going to be 11 days, but the last 2 days are open to the public. So if you can't come for the first 9 days, that's cool. If you're still interested, come for the weekend, and then you can just, you know, participate. And then we also anchored it around other events that were going on. So like this was from the 1st of September, but then I think 14th to 18th of September, there was a regenerative gathering very close to TDF, like 100 kilometers south. So that was like a big point for all the regenerators from Europe to come. So we actually had some people that, so yeah, when I was talking with people on the call, I was saying, hey, you know, you can come either for the mastermind or for the open day, or also for the gathering of the tribes, where we had our own TDF camp. And some people actually came for the whole journey. So like from the you know, from the mastermind all the way through the open day, all the way through the gathering of the tribes, which was amazing because then, you know, after 2 weeks of being together in all these different contexts, first creating together and then showing our work to the wider public, and then going together to a gathering where we also took the book, but it was more about playful creation of a camp, kind of Burning Man style, where, you know, we had to build our kitchen, build the whole space, and everything that we wanted to bring was co-created. So this was a really, and some people just came for the open day and the gathering of the tribe. So it was like the kind of a mix. But yeah, the invitation was basically, hey, come and let's reflect on what it takes to build a village. Come for the whole thing. And yeah, if you want to stay with us longer, you can, and have a call with me. Yeah.
So it could as well have been like a movie if different people had shown up with different
absolutely
references.
And I think this was the most the second, like the hidden thing that I didn't really realize why the calls were so powerful. Like obviously it was about the formation of the group and just, you know, weaving the right people into the place, but really what was happening, people had ideas, you know. So based on how I was explaining what is the mastermind, it really evolved through the calls that I had with people. So like, I don't know, one person just said, oh, but I have my own projects, so what if we would structure the day in this way? And he basically created like a daily schedule version 1, just like because he shared something. I was like, oh wow, this is brilliant, perfect, let's just take what he said and just make slight modifications. And then in the next call, I could say, oh, and this is actually how the day will look like, you know? So it was just building blocks. So it was really fully co-created in that sense.
I have something to share. I really like the idea of you're asking what are the next steps. And I think doing this kind of presentation about the whole process of the book and taking it to places, I think like this is a big part of the book. It's like how it was made, how it was created, like the story behind it. So something that I was thinking as you were making this presentation for us was like, wow, you should definitely go to spaces that could either, you know, want to buy the book or promote the book, or that are talking about, you know, just regen spaces in general, or like adjacent spaces, and just do this presentation and explain the whole thing, like bring the story about the book and just be there to answer questions and explain how it happened, and maybe even just bring a few people sometimes that were there making the book with you to have this human component. That's what I wanted to add.
Or do a book about how the book was made. Another book, yeah.
And then a book about the book about how the book was made.
This is great.
I mean,
Sylvia.
it could be an epilogue. You could have sort of the like making of epilogue that you, because the material you shared first, sort of the step by step, was actually really interesting. I mean, I don't think you have to go into crazy detail, but you know, you did it in a short period of time.
Yeah. Thank you for already like leaning into this second part. We have 12 minutes, so I'm just gonna like condense it. But basically my kind of main, let's say, so okay, like being honest, I feel like this book creation was maybe the most amazing thing I've done professionally speaking in this creative process. And I can feel like, okay, I have a methodology and team that can pull this together for any kind of project or organization to create something. And okay, it's designed for books, but it could be really a film. It could be whatever. It doesn't really matter. I like books because books are cool, you know, it's like a very tangible, specific thing, but it can be anything else. So like my 2 questions that I'm trying to figure out right now is, so first is, I really want this to get to print. It's almost there. Like it feels like that's why it's V.09. It's not V1 because it's still, it could use work, but we just don't have energy in the group anymore because, you know, people spread into their own projects right now. So it's not so easy. So that's why I released it earlier, to see if I can gather momentum and ideally find a publisher that could actually pay us in advance and, you know, like go to mainstream shops, because why not? Like I could imagine this book going into co-living hubs, co-working spaces in, you know, Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, London, wherever, where people of this kind of interests are moving around. So this is one question. The other question is, I would love to do this for a living. How could I pitch this? And where, like, which kind of organizations or companies or spaces could actually pay me and my team to deliver similar kind of experiences for their group? Because, like, there's the benefit of creating an artifact, right? Whether it's a book or something, but it's also the team building and the team creation and this playful vibe behind it. So this is kind of like my two big questions. The region space, the big problem with region space is nobody has money. We're all working for purpose, and this kind of sucks balls, you know, like it's really not a great thing, and this eventually will run out. So people are essentially, even with this book, people are paying to do it, right? Because they had to pay to come to TDF and then spend time. So this is not really sustainable. So I'm not sure, you know, where could the next book come from? Because I know this one will eventually get completed. Whether it's going to go to print or not doesn't, you know, at the end it doesn't matter. It would be nice, but it's great. But, you know, we could make another book about regenerating the oceans. We could do about regenerative crypto things. We can do about anything. But the question is, who would be a good group, organization, company, umbrella, or where we could fund it for the next iteration?
I don't know, it might be totally out of place or so, but I was thinking, would it be something to add to the hum as a thing to bring to organizations, you know, because it's not, of course, they are not working with just self-generating organizations and things like that, but they are in that space where a lot of people will be interested. And they are working with people that have a different mindset. And the way you bring it here, I mean, you'll get people enthusiastic, I'm sure. You know, you've got so much enthusiasm for this, you know, you can see it's your passion, and you can see it's, so I don't know whether you have talked about this in extent to Natia and Rich yet, but it's, I don't know, it just sort of came into my mind, like it would be a completely different branch of their hum, but it might be a really great branch, because you can do anything with it. The way you've been working, you can do anything with it, you know, it's yeah, it's co-creating. So but yeah, that's just the idea that popped in my mind.
I've written this in the chat. You know, I think I'm always like, it's like who's already publishing similar things, and I'm gonna guess that a lot of it's gonna be paperless. So it is ebooks, but I think it's interesting to put it, you know, I think the micro solidarity stuff, you know, that he published that then may eventually become a book, you know, but the paperless idea of it being a website that has a really complex, you know, I think there's ways to look at it that way and look and see who's, you know, or grant writing would be, you know, the other direction to go. But I would imagine that there are people who are interested in getting this kind of knowledge out that helps some finances. I've got Prem over here who's like, we have to go. I'm trying to become a German citizen. So I'm gonna say goodbye.
Good luck.
Bye guys.
Good luck. See you later.
Bye. Say hi to
Thank you for
Prince.
coming.
I will. Bye.
Super useful.
One thing that comes to mind is, so for finding, one thing is finding clients, people, groups to do this with. And another thing is publishing this one, like printing. I was thinking that for printing, I think for both, the key is like to find the market, people, audiences for it. And once you have it, you could also do a Kickstarter campaign and people pre-order the book. And once you have the goal, you just print the first edition, and you can already budget for like a second edition to have it ready for sale that could be an option. I just imagine you would first need to find places that would be like, oh yeah, once you have this, you know, we'll buy X books, we'll contribute to the Kickstarter.
I even thinking now, maybe for the next co-budget round, you could do something. I don't know exactly what, but I thought, well, maybe there's some funds there. Yeah.
That's a very good idea. I mean, I feel, yeah, like right now, our biggest bottleneck is really that we cannot pay anyone to do work more on this project. So it's basically kind of a hobby, right? And it requires, even like a Kickstarter campaign requires so much work to put it together. So like we're just need to generate cash out of nothing. But I really hear you, like, yes. So one thing I'm taking away is talk to Rich, which is actually a very good point, because A, we have a gathering anyway. B, I know he wants to make a book for Micro Solidarity, and C, he actually contributed content to the book. So he's even listed as one of the authors, and, you know, he helped me quite a bit with the process. Then I'm getting this idea of actually talking about the book, how the book is made. And I know this intuitively that I need to write like a proper documentation. And that's one of the things that I'm doing. So I kind of, you know, at first I wanted to get the book done, but that's the next step. And maybe show up to places like actual physical spaces as I travel through Europe to Enspiral Gathering, but also I'll be in some other places to maybe just present how this was made and show the process in places that could gather interest for the book, but also for potentially hiring the next one, and seeing if there's potential in Enspiral to fund it. I mean, I wanted to stamp Enspiral logo on this since 3 people from Enspiral were collaborating on this, but I'm still waiting for like a green light from whoever is in the brand working group. But you know, that essentially I see it as part of Enspiral-ish product. So yeah, if I could channel some funds from a co-budget round, that could maybe pay for the setting up the Kickstarter. So then we can raise the funds that would then allow for like the next round. Yeah, like I'm really seeing these domino steps, and I'm just kind of trying to understand what's the next brick. Like I know the first one, publish. Okay, it's done. What's the next one? But I feel like I'm getting much more clarity. So like, wow, this was super useful. We have 3 minutes. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. And thanks, Anne. I know it's like another hour of Zoom for you.
I'm glad that I came. That's really inspiring. We'll be glad to lie on my couch as well for an hour.
Get yourself one of these. I highly recommend.
All
right. You're on mute.
I'm actually a bit contemplating, because I said like I feel nostalgia for this big company I've worked in. Like, what's the difference between what you do and what the project manager does? There's quite a lot of overlap, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I feel, you know, my maybe problem, I'm not sure if it's a problem, but the current context is that I'm wearing too many hats for this project. And especially this was very apparent after we left from the mastermind. In the mastermind, I think we did an excellent job of distributing tasks, so I wasn't overloaded. I was high on working with people all the time, but I always get in that state. So I was, you know, not sleeping much and just constantly creating. But I can sustain that for short periods of time. But then after we left, it felt like a lot of work was on my shoulders. So I was doing the product manager and the catalyst and the editor. And it's like, those are not the things I would like to be doing. You know, I'm the facilitator. I'm the guy who brings people together, and through play, we make the book. And then I can do like presentations. I can catalyze, I can remove bottlenecks, but like editing is not, you know, what I want to do. And I spent a month editing basically, because it was pretty much me and maybe a couple, like really a handful of people, which was to be expected, you know, like, so no, it's no hard feelings, because yeah, it was supposed to be 11 days and it was 3 months at the end. But it was also 2.5 months extra, because if it would be the whole group, it would be a week, you know, so it's, but those are lessons for the future. but a very good pointer. Like, we need to distribute the team, but that also brings the question of, okay, but to actually pay people to do the work, we need to pay them to do the work, because you know, you can only do so much working for the promise of return eventually.
Oh, thank you, Michal. I think it was really worthwhile coming to this call. I didn't know what to expect, and I'm really sort of recharged and happy, and even feel a sort of a sense of proud. I don't know why. I'm not the mother. But it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so yes, and also Sylvia's work, I think it's amazing. So thank you guys. It was beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this call, even though I already knew most of the things. It was really nice to just, for me, the biggest thing was the presentation. Like, oh, wow, you can actually just go to people and talk about this, or just write about this and share something about the context of where the book was made, because it really makes a difference. And also, guys, this is not very good, but as we were all talking, I was sketching and I made alien versions of Brigitte and and Emily, and they don't look like you, but they are.
Oh.
I love it.
Okay.
Your
Yeah,
alien
yeah.
selves. All right. Thanks so much for coming. Always a pleasure to see you. And in 2 weeks, we have Richard with his magical vibes.
What was the topic then? I forgot.
I have no idea. I don't think he shared the topic. I
Oh,
think
he
he
shared.
said, I'm going to share about what I'm doing. That's my memory. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Everyone.
Have a beautiful day. See you later.
Ta-da.
Bye-bye.